I actually think you can change your own beliefs, right? It's actually healthy to have semi-irrational beliefs in some ways, right? Like there's like that great quote about like whether you believe you can or believe you can't, you're right. It might be like totally silly or irrational to believe that you can do something like maybe you can make fusion energy work. Maybe you can make brain machine interfaces work. Maybe you can cure aging, maybe you can create a new country like in the world that has more economic freedom, right? Maybe you can start whatever it is you want to do. Self-talk is important, right? Like if you're telling yourself every day, like, oh, you're not smart enough, you're too slow, like you're not good at, you don't have enough energy, you're too old, like whatever your limiting belief is, you're going to eventually believe it. So I often will try to do that. I mean, I try to be very conscious about my own self-talk. I talk to myself sometimes, or I write stuff down in my journal or whatever. I'm like, yeah, you can do this. Like you have lots of energy, you have lots of time, you have lots of whatever resources. Like you can actually decide to be a happier person. Like I think Abe Lincoln or someone said that. It was like people are roughly as happy as they decide to be. And so you can choose what you want to focus on. Do you want to choose to focus on the things that, like resources that you have, appreciations that you have, or do you want to choose to focus on the negative? And left to our own devices, our brains will default to the negative or 50-50. And so you have to kind of consciously choose and make like a habit out of focusing on the more positive parts.
What's something that you still believe you can't do or you're afraid of?
Well, I think given enough time, which, we all have finite time on the planet, it's probably why I co-founded and invested in a longevity company. But I think given enough time, I think I maybe could help do anything. Like, I don't know. But I'll tell you something I am afraid of is I still am afraid of hurting people. Like I'm conflict avoidant. This is like something I've been trying to get over from my childhood, or I don't know where it comes from, but like whenever I have to deliver bad news to somebody, or it creates a lot of anxiety in me. Like I ruminate on it. It causes like, I can feel it. And that's, there's a positive aspect of it too. You don't just want to be like unintentionally hurting people or something like that, right? But I also think that if it's the right thing to do, I don't want it to just destroy my week or something, right? It's, usually it doesn't do anything that bad, but like I will feel the fear about it and I'll do it anyway. So it hasn't held me back tremendously, but I wish I just didn't feel that fear. That would be something I'm working on.
You think you can do almost anything. There's also things that you were wrong about, but that ended up or turned out to be, you were wrong, but turned out to be amazing successes for Coinbase. Can you give me an example?
Yeah, well, I think there are lots of examples like that where the first time we tried something, it didn't work. And so I was wrong. And then I'm okay with that. It just means you try it again and you see if that works. And if that doesn't work, you try it again and you do that 100 times. And eventually you get something to go through. So there's lots of small examples like that. Like the first time we tried expanding into Japan, it didn't work. We had to shut it down. Or the first time we tried having an OKR system, objectives and key results in the company, it didn't work very well. We had to try like 3 or 4 iterations. A lot of small examples. I'll give you maybe a bigger one. I initially thought as an entrepreneur that you just follow the rules and then you don't really have to engage with the government, right? This kind of going back to the policy conversation we had earlier. And I actually really didn't like the idea of going to spend a lot of time with politicians or in DC. And I was like, oh man, I'll do it if I need to, but like, I really want to work on the product and the engineering. And like, can't we just follow the rules and then we don't have to engage with the government? And I realized at a certain point that was quite naive for the reasons we talked about, because even if you're not interested in the government's interested in you. And there might even be people who try to weaponize the lack of clarity in the rules to attack you. And so I had to learn to love policy work, for lack of a better word. And I think we're in a much healthier place on that. We've built up a lot of skill set. And it's actually allowed me to turn my time and attention back to like innovating in product. And we need to make sure we're building on chain and bringing all these assets. We're doing the everything exchange now, all this cool stuff. So, but that was an example where I was pretty hesitant, reluctant to really embrace that idea for a while. And I think it hurt us.
You said before that you worked at Airbnb.
Yeah.
I want to quote the other Brian, who you know very well, from Airbnb.
Mm-hmm.
As I became a CEO, I started leading from the front at the top of the mountain. But then the higher you get to the peak, the fewer people there are with you. No one ever told me how lonely you would get, and I wasn't prepared for that. On the day of our IPO, we reached $100 billion validation. I remember after going public, I was like, oh my God, there's this like amazing exaltation. It was amazing. I'd gone to the mountain, and then I woke up the next day, and my life was exactly the same. I'm alone. I wake up, I put on my sweatpants, I go onto my iMac, and I have like 10 to 12 hours of Zoom meetings, and I just don't really have much of my life outside of work. My work was my life. These are the words from Brian Chesky, the co-founder and CEO of Airbnb. Coinbase has a pretty similar story to Airbnb with an IPO near $100 billion. How did you feel during the IPO day and the day after the IPO day?
Yeah, well, there's actually a great documentary called Coin, which filmed that day. And so people can go watch it if they want to. And it shows me on that day, it was during COVID, which I think maybe Airbnb was during COVID too, which is why he's talking about the Zoom and the sweatpants and all that. But yeah, we were not ringing the bell at the NASDAQ. I was just in my own home, virtually engaging with media and things. And yeah, it was kind of like a surreal moment where, I look back on it now as kind of like a milestone in my life, and it was a much bigger deal actually looking backward than at the time. It just felt like another fundraise, and I actually didn't feel very much that day. You're tired, you're busy, you're doing a million things. I didn't really stop to think about it that much, but what really started to make it resonate for me more emotionally was like the hundreds or maybe I think over 1,000 people like became millionaires on that day, like employees and investors. And I got so many messages from people telling me about how it had changed their life, like that I had created this and they'd allowed their family to buy a home, and they were first generation this and that. And so it actually had a major like emotional impact over me, looking back on it over time. And it's something I'll never forget. But yeah, at the time it was almost surreal. Like I didn't feel that much. And I think if I were to zoom out on what Brian Chesky is talking about there, I mean, he's right. It can be lonely as you go, as the company grows. And, early on at Coinbase, we were like a small team, and I think I was just like one of the people, and we were all like friends. And there was something that happened maybe when we were like a couple hundred people or beyond, where I remember I showed up to a happy hour one time, and everyone kind of got quiet, and they're like, "Oh," and it was like, "Oh my God, like the CEO's here." And I was that was the first time I realized, oh, like it's weird. It's like it's weird when I'm kind of like the buzzkill when I show up to the party. So one thing that I did that might be helpful to other people, because I was working a lot and just growing the company, and you can have some kind of a really good relationship with a lot of employees and people that work with you. They're actually great relationships, but they are fundamentally different because if you're their boss, right? So one thing I did was I decided I need to have like a stronger friend group of other founders. And I reached out to maybe like 10 founders these are just people who, when I interacted with them, I was like, oh, it's interesting. I learned something. It raises my energy to be around them. And maybe like 7 of them showed up or something out of the 10. And I just decided, I was like, hey, we should just like meet once a month and go to dinner. Maybe once a year, we should like do a trip or something. And it became this friend group that actually has added a lot of value to my life, I think, hopefully to theirs. And we talk about work, we talk about personal stuff. And so it's been like a great friend group, I think that's useful for people to do. Some people might call this like a mastermind group or something. I don't know, but you can learn from each other about building companies, but a lot of it's like more personal stuff than just friendships. So I was always somebody who, I don't know, I didn't like naturally keep in touch with people or build friends, because I'm always just so busy with stuff. Unless I scheduled it, like, okay, every month we're gonna hang out, and once a year we're gonna go on a trip. Unless I scheduled it, it just didn't happen organically. And so that was a way for me to make sure. And then of course, like, build your own family. So friendships, family, and then work. And I think that's a good community.